Welcome to Gloom and Ghouls, your daily dose of adrenaline. The story begins with an adventurous young American couple, Sarah and Mark, visiting a decrepit old house on the outskirts of their small town. The locals call it the Devil's Den, claiming that no one who enters ever returns unchanged. Intrigued by urban legends, the couple laughs off the warnings and steps inside. The house is eerily silent, its walls cracked and covered in mold. As they explore, they find nothing supernatural, no ghosts, no apparitions. But as they prepare to leave, Sarah notices something written in blood-red paint on the wall near the exit. "I will come to you soon." Mark dismisses it as vandalism, but Sarah feels a chill run down her spine. She tries to convince him to stay longer and investigate, but he insists they leave. They laugh about it on the way home, dismissing the note as nonsense. Fast forward several months, Sarah and Mark are now happily married and expecting their first child. However, Sarah's pregnancy becomes increasingly strange. Every night, she is plagued by vivid nightmares, visions of shadowy figures looming over her bed, whispers echoing through empty halls, and flashes of the haunted house. In these dreams, she hears a voice repeating the same chilling phrase, "You brought me here." Despite her fears, Sarah gives birth during a violent storm, when flooding prevents them from reaching the hospital. With trembling hands, Mark helps deliver their baby boy at home. But when the child emerges, silence fills the room. He doesn't cry. Instead, his piercing red eyes lock onto his parents, and his tiny mouth curls into what looks like a sinister smile. His appearance is unsettling. Blackened gums reveal sharp teeth. His nails are long and claw-like, and his skin is unnaturally pale. Though terrified, Sarah and Mark try to rationalize everything, convincing themselves that their son just needs time to grow into a normal child. But as the years pass, the child, whom they name Ethan, grows faster than any human should. By age 2, he walks. By 3, he speaks in fragmented sentences filled with cryptic phrases like, "They're waiting," or "It's almost time." He never cries, even when hurt. He only laughs. A low, guttural chuckle that sends shivers down their spines. Ethan's physical features become more grotesque with each passing month. His face elongates, his jawline sharpens, and his red eyes glow brighter. His presence seems to warp reality around him. Clocks stop working, electronics short-circuit, and animals flee whenever he approaches. Desperate for answers, Sarah begins researching possible explanations. One night, while digging through old newspaper clippings, she discovers a chilling article about the haunted house they visited years ago. It describes how a family once lived there before disappearing without a trace. Their last known communication was a letter sent to a neighbor, which read, "We made a mistake. Something followed us home." Realization dawns on Sarah. The words scrawled on the wall, "I will come to you soon," weren't random graffiti. They were a promise. By the time Ethan turns 4, things spiral out of control. He starts exhibiting unnatural abilities, levitating objects, speaking in voices not his own, and vanishing for hours only to reappear unscathed. One evening, Sarah catches him staring out the window, whispering, "They're calling me back." Desperate for answers, Mark installs cameras throughout the house, hoping to capture evidence of Ethan's behavior. What they discover shocks them. Footage shows Ethan standing perfectly still in the middle of the living room, surrounded by swirling shadows that seem alive. At one point, he turns directly toward the camera and whispers, "You shouldn't have left me behind." Sarah pieces together the horrifying truth. Ethan isn't their biological child. He is something else, an entity waiting in that haunted house, summoned into their lives by their fateful trespass years ago. One night, during another torrential storm, the power goes out. The house plunges into darkness, illuminated only by the sharp, fleeting flashes of lightning. Sarah wakes to find Ethan standing at the foot of her bed. His glowing red eyes are fixed on hers. Behind him, ghostly figures emerge, shadowy silhouettes of people who look eerily familiar. Terrified, Sarah grabs a flashlight and stumbles downstairs, only to find Mark unconscious on the floor. Ethan suddenly appears beside her with a rusted key in his hand. He presses it into her palm and whispers hauntingly, "Take me back." Sarah realizes the key belongs to the haunted house, their entry point into this nightmare. Reluctantly, and with no other choice, she agrees, hoping to bring an end to their torment. Together, the three drive through the relentless storm to the Devil's Den. Inside, the air is suffocating, thick with dread, the walls faintly pulsing as though alive. Guided by Ethan, they descend into the basement, where an ancient wooden door stands ominously. Using the key, Sarah unlocks it, revealing a dark and endless void. Before she can react, Ethan steps into the threshold, shoving her aside. The moment he crosses, the house begins to tremble violently. Shadows, which had been stalking them, merge with Ethan, transforming his form into something unrecognizable, a monstrous, towering demon. From within the void comes a deep, otherworldly voice booming, "Thank you for bringing him home." Horrified, Sarah grabs Mark and flees the house as it convulses and collapses into itself, consumed by roaring flames. For a fleeting moment, they believe it's over, that they've succeeded. But as they drive away, Ethan's laughter echoes chillingly from the back seat. Sarah glances into the rearview mirror and sees a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at her. The realization hits. They didn't leave Ethan behind. He's still with them. Mark freezes, his face pale, his breath sharp. "Pull over," he whispers, trembling, and slams the brakes. The car skids to a halt on a desolate, rain-soaked road. Mark spins around in his seat, his hands shaking. But the back seat is empty. No Ethan, no shadow, no sign of the child. Just silence. "Where is he?" Mark barely manages to whisper, his voice cracking. "I don't know," Sarah replies, clutching her chest as though trying to calm the frantic beating of her heart. "But we need to get as far away as possible." They take off, speeding through the storm, desperate to create as much distance as they can between them and the now destroyed house. Yet an oppressive feeling of being watched gnaws at their nerves. It seems to seep into the car, press against the walls of their minds, making every shadow in their peripheral vision seem alive. Weeks pass. The couple relocates to a new town, deciding it's their only chance at starting over. They abandon their old home, leaving behind memories and any trace of the haunting that changed them forever. Or so they hope. However, some nightmares don't simply fade, and some presences can never truly be escaped. Even as they settle into this new chapter of their lives, something feels wrong. They begin to realize that even though they left Ethan and everything he brought with him behind, the echoes of the Devil's Den have scarred them in more ways than one. And some doors, once opened, can never be fully shut. Sarah and Mark find themselves grappling with the creeping realization that Ethan's presence is far from gone. They move to a modest apartment in a completely different town, desperate for a fresh start, and relieved when they manage to sell their old house quickly, almost too quickly. Yet no matter how far they run, the strange occurrences follow. It starts innocently enough, doors creaking open when no one is around, sudden cold spots forming in random places, and distant whispers heard in the dead of night. The whispers are faint at first, but grow louder, their source elusive. Then, things escalate. One evening, while Sarah is cooking dinner, she catches a figure dart past the kitchen doorway out of the corner of her eye. Startled, she investigates, but no one is there. However, the knife block on the counter has been knocked over, its contents scattered across the floor. Mark's experiences are no better. He begins having vivid nightmares. In one recurring dream, he relives the night Ethan was born. This time, though, the child speaks directly to him, saying, "You thought you could escape me," in a voice that is layered, distorted, and inhuman. "But I am part of you now." The dream always ends with Ethan's glowing red eyes locking with Mark's, pulling him awake in cold sweats. Desperate for clarity, Sarah consults a psychic recommended by a co-worker. The elderly woman listens intently as Sarah recounts every detail: the haunted house, the cryptic message scrawled on the wall, Ethan's horrifying birth, and their consequent torment. When Sarah finally finishes, the psychic leans back in her chair, her face grim and expression unreadable. After what feels like an eternity, she speaks. "You didn't just bring something home from that house," the psychic begins. "You became vessels for it. That thing you call Ethan, it wasn't merely a demon. It was a fragment of something far older and infinitely more dangerous, something bound to that place." Sarah's voice trembles as she asks, "What does that mean?" "It means," the psychic continues, her tone dropping to a low, deliberate pace, "that by leaving that house, you shattered its seal. It's free. And now, it doesn't need a body to exist. It can be anywhere, everywhere, and it will always find you." Shaken to their core, Sarah and Mark return to their apartment, burdened by the psychic's ominous revelation. They now know the stakes are far greater than they had imagined. Determined to fight back, they begin poring over books and the internet, searching for every scrap of information on rituals, protective symbols, or ancient rites that might combat whatever force haunts them. Late one night, their research leads them to an obscure occult text which promises an exorcism ritual designed to sever spiritual ties. Though the instructions are riddled with cryptic warnings, they have no choice but to try. The living room becomes their battlefield. They rearrange furniture to create a large open space and meticulously draw sigils across the floor in chalk. Candles are placed at specific intervals. As they chant the incantation, the air around them becomes icy, and the lights flicker erratically, dimming with every word they utter. A sudden gust slams the apartment's front door shut. Then, heavy footsteps echo ominously down the hallway. Mark and Sarah exchange wide-eyed glances, their voices faltering as Ethan steps into view. But this is no longer the child they thought they had raised. Ethan's form has changed grotesquely. His limbs are impossibly thin, and his oversized head seems almost too large for his elongated body, a monstrous caricature of a human child. His gleaming red eyes are brighter than ever, and when he smiles, rows of jagged, otherworldly teeth glint in the flickering light. "You shouldn't have tried this," Ethan growls, his voice reverberating like a thunderstorm. "I've grown fond of you both." His words send a chill through the room. Before they can react, Ethan raises a clawed hand, extinguishing the candles in an instant. Darkness engulfs them entirely, leaving only the sporadic flashes of lightning outside to illuminate fleeting glimpses of his horrifying form. Sarah screams as she feels invisible hands clawing at her, dragging her toward the glowing symbols they had drawn. "Mark, help me!" she cries, her voice trembling. With a surge of desperation, Mark lunges toward her, determined to hold onto her at any cost. Thrown backward, with a sickening thud, Mark crumples unconscious against the wall. Sarah's screams echo through the apartment as the invisible force tightens its grip, pulling her toward the center of the circle. The storm rages on outside, a cacophony of thunder and howling winds masking the terror happening within. And then, as suddenly as it began, silence descends. The neighbors later report hearing faint screams, but they dismiss them as the howling wind, a storm like any other. Days pass, and no one sees or hears from Sarah and Mark again. When authorities eventually break into the apartment, they find it eerily empty. The furniture is untouched, but the scorched sigils remain carved into the floor, their edges blackened as though burned from within. There's no sign of a struggle, no note, no trace of the couple or the entity they fought. Months pass in uneasy quiet. In another state, a young couple excitedly tours a Victorian home. A steal, the real estate agent explains, as it's been vacant for years. It's newly renovated, the hardwood polished to a gleaming finish, sunlight streaming through spotless windows. As they explore the upstairs with nervous excitement, the woman stops abruptly. Something catches her eye. Scrawled faintly in faded red paint on the nursery wall are the words, "I will come to you soon." She laughs nervously, brushing it off as leftover graffiti from the previous tenants. Her partner casually shrugs it off, and together they decide to buy the house. That night, as they settle into their new home, the house feels still, peaceful even. But around 3 a.m., the woman wakes to a strange sound, a faint, eerie laughter filtering down the hallway. Cautiously, she gets up and follows the sound, her heart pounding louder with every step. She finds herself in the nursery, its moonlit walls casting long, unsettling shadows. The crib in the corner sways gently back and forth, though it's utterly empty. Above it, in fresh, gleaming red paint, the words return, "I will come to you soon." The haunting cycle continues, and the Devil's Den claims more lives. The questions linger. Where are Sarah and Mark? And did they truly banish the entity, or merely set it free to roam far beyond its cursed walls? If you're as curious as we are, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Gloom and Ghouls for your daily dose of adrenaline. What do you think happened to them? Leave your theories in the comments below, and join us again as we uncover the darkest, most chilling tales lurking in the shadows. Until next time, stay alert, stay prepared, and remember, some doors should never be opened. Don't forget to like and subscribe.